The purpose of my presentation today was to discuss the current situation in terms of production that we're likely going to see in South America next year. The U.S. season is, now that it's in early September, is quickly coming to an end. There's only so much more that weather can do. So we need to look towards South America to see if we're going to have another good season in South America, or we could potentially have a bad season in terms of production. So today what I was talking about is mainly the economic and political situation in both Argentina and Brazil. What's going on there is that the situation economically and politically is not as conducive to planting more area as they have in the past for soybeans. And in terms of weather, we're moving out of an El Nino and heading into a La Nina. One might argue we're already in a La Nina state. And what that means is that hot and dry weather could occur in both southern Brazil as well as central Argentina, which would negatively affect yields. Today I was presenting on the economic and political situation in South America heading into the remainder of the 2016-2017 season. In the U.S., we're here in early September, and there's only so much more of an effect that weather can have. We more than likely have a very big crop coming, so now we need to turn to South America. And today I was presenting on the economic and political situation that's occurring in both Argentina and Brazil. Well, for the American farmer, I think it presents an opportunity to not only market the crop that's about to come online here in the next couple of months, but also there's the potential for next season. If demand worldwide stays as it is, relatively high for soybeans, and if South America does have a potentially bad season, that's really going to be advantageous for the American farmer. I think the key takeaway is not get lulled into a sense of complacency. For several consecutive years, we've seen big plantings worldwide in the U.S., Argentina, Brazil, and even in places like Paraguay. We've seen beneficial weather and we've seen great yields. So we've seen a lot of production. Demand has kept a pace, but it's to not get lulled into that it's going to occur year after year after year. At some point, we have to see bad weather. And I think the key takeaway from the presentation that I gave today is that it's always on the horizon. And so we need to look forward for South America next season as we move into a La Nina, that we could see some bad weather, again, which it could be advantageous for the American farmer. Some other aspects besides weather that drive yield and things that, for example, that I monitor is always satellite imagery. Weather happens on a localized level, temperature, precipitation, soil moisture, but then we also need to get a much more holistic picture of what's going on, and technology allows us to do that, particularly with satellite imagery. And that's one of our areas of expertise at Thomson Reuters Lanworth, is to take satellite imagery, monitor it almost on a near daily basis to get an independent, objective measure of what's going on with the health of the crop besides just weather. During my presentation, I talked about how La Nina weather going into the South American growing season could have an adverse effect. So similarly, if we looked back a year ago, as we were still in an El Nino state and kind of heading out of that, if we applied the same logic to this season, will we have seen the same results? And the answer is both yes and no. We knew that heat was going to set up here in the U.S., and it certainly played out that way. We saw one of the warmest Junes and Julys that we've seen on record. But the big trump card was precipitation. In a situation like that, we don't know where wet conditions are going to set up, and we don't know exactly where dry conditions are going to set up, and that's very important. Whether dryness is going to set up over a high-yielding area or a relatively lower yielding area. And that's what we saw this season, is that the really the hottest and driest conditions set up over eastern areas of the eastern Corn Belt, so places like Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, and further east. Relatively beneficial precipitation conditions set up over places like Iowa and Illinois. And so that really helped us to see what would be a relatively good season out of the U.S., which in other seasons of similar climatic conditions, we may have not seen that.